You might think if you are just flush with cash, four, five, $600,000, and you walk into a sales office and you're like, "Hey, I'm paying cash for this house and I want to get the best deal possible." You might think that, you can negotiate the builder into the ground, get everything you want, and get their firstborn child from the sales rep, right? Not quite. There's a couple nuances that you kind of have to understand. You really need to understand the way builders make their money, the way they structure their margins, the way that they work with their preferred lenders. And if you're not careful, if you're walking in as a cash buyer, you may walk out with a worse deal than somebody who's actually going through the full financing, right? So I want to kind of walk you through it, break it down. This actually came from a comment. Somebody was asking like, "Hey, what if we were buying cash? How do we negotiate our deal? How do we navigate it?" So we're going to answer that question, give you everything you need to know, and give you the wherewithal and the tips and tricks. If you're one of those people who's like, "Hey, you know what? I've got $500,000, $700,000, and I just want to pay cash for our house as we're coming in and buying a home here in DFW." If we haven't met before, my name is Zach. My team and I always sell as new construction real estate. So I'm gonna talk to you every day about how to get the best deal possible with builders, how to spend all of their money and take advantage of them to get the house that you want. So one thing I need you to understand as we do this is how the builders spend and make their money. So I want to clarify right up front. This is not like a car dealership, right? So like if you're familiar with the car dealership space, when you go in, you negotiate the car, then you negotiate all the terms, and it feels kind of sleazy back and forth. And in the car dealership space, you have what's called, like if you're doing financing and you're doing in-house with Ford, GMC, Toyota, whoever, you have the actual rate they give you, and then you have the buying rate, right? So like let's say you qualify, they buy the rate at 5%. Well, then the dealership goes in and makes a markup and they say, "Oh, hey, you actually only qualified for 6.5. And then they make money in the middle, right? So you kind of get screwed on that. We don't have to go into detail on cars and houses, but I just want to give you the clarity up front. Like that is not how it works in the financing world with a home. So it's not like, hey, the builder can go get this rate, but you qualified for this rate and they're making money in the middle of the lending. That's not how they're making their money. They are, however, a lot of times they are partnered with or they own a lender. And so through that partnership, they're able to spend money to make a deal work for you, right? So like, for example, perfect example, if you're looking at a Highland home, right? A lot of times they will advertise up to $20,000 in closing costs. And then when you get into their contracts, it'll actually say $11,000 from Highland Homes and $9,000 from Highland Home Loans, or vice versa, one of the two. So then in that case, like if you decided to leave from their lender that they have a partnership with and you went to another lender, you would be potentially leaving that money on the table, right? So that's how they do that. They go in and they say, "Hey, we're going to partner together. You're going to carry some of the cost. I'm going to carry some of the cost. We're going to carry the burden and give this to the customer for when they're buying their house." The money's not made in where they get those rates, right? They're actually spending a lot of money in some cases to get to those rates for you. The money is made in the margin on, how much it costs them to build the house, where they're making their markups there. If they own their own lender, if they're selling, when they do their origination fees and their points and all of those things, they can make money there. If they have a partnership with a lender, so like Pacesetter, for example, does not own their own lender, they have a partnership with Benchmark. And so two totally separate companies, it's their preferred lender. So if the lender makes money, Pacesetter is not necessarily making money. And if Pacesetter makes money, the lender is not necessarily making money. Does that make, it's kind of got to clear that out. So they're both making, their profit separately. And so you just kind of have to understand that, right? So some of them, like a DR Horton, is trying to capture profit with their lender because they own their own in-house lending. Other builders have partnerships. They're not necessarily trying to capture profit there. They're making it in their margins, right? The other thing, one thing I want you to understand as a buyer. So let's just say you're saying, "Hey, you know what? We found this house. It's listed at $450. We want to pay cash." And you're like, "Oh, we're just gonna say that we can do this for $350." Well, it doesn't quite work like that, right? So here's the hard truth. If a builder is advertising a pre-bought rate, so like if they're saying, "Hey, we have a 3.99 year one and a 4.99 fixed," or and they've pre-spent that money, you may not be able to get access to those funds because they've already used it to buy into the ability to give you those rates. I always think about, like, I was trying to think of the best way visually to talk about this. And the best way I know how is, like, imagine if you had a pond, and in that pond, the pond is stocked with fish, right? And so, but in order to get access to the pond, you have to have a ticket to get in so that you can fish out of the pond. But then once all the fish are gone, the pond is closed, right? So same thing is true a lot of times when builders do these pre-bought rates with either their lender or a partner lender. They spend a large sum of money on the front end, and it's good for the next 30, 60, 90 days, depending on how they structure the deal with their lender, that gets access into this pool where all of this money then gets fished back out and says, oh, somebody over here is buying a house and we're giving them a 4.99. And that's we had $5 million in there. Okay, well, we're writing a loan for 400. Okay, well, now we have, 4.6 million or however, and then they just keep fishing and fishing and fishing out of that pond until either their access expires or they run out of fish, right? So if you're coming in with cash and you're like, oh, I just want to get all of that incentive poured back into me, you may not be able to get it if they're advertising that right there because they've already pre-spent that money. So you just kind of have to look at it and you have to ask. Another important thing to note is if you're going in with cash, what you probably don't want to do is you probably don't want to go in and be like, hey, we're going to just slash it off the base price, right? Like, okay, I'm going to build a house. Well, instead of my base price being $525, let's just make my base price, $490. And then we'll just add all of our stuff back in, right? What'll happen is the builder might agree to this, but then they're going to take all of the rest of their incentive out of that to back end to compensate it, right? So then what you're doing is like, oh, what you really would have had is, $25,000 in design and another 40, let's call it $30,000 in closing costs. And they just said, okay, well, we'll just drop the price $25,000 and you feel really good. And you're like, oh yeah, I did great. And then the builder's like, yeah, you did great. And there was still money on the table for you to go and get and leverage through that transaction. So what you don't want to do in that case is we really want to get all of the pricing put together. So this kind of goes two different avenues. Let's say we're looking at a build job, right? So on a build, we want to get all of our structural stuff in, all of our design options, everything that you're looking to add in, get that put in, and then let the builder take whatever. Hey, we're already going to give 20 or 25,000 in design, and then let's see what we can get in addition to using some of those closing funds. Can we get, in the case of the Highland, are they advertising $20,000? Well, you're not going to need all of that to cover any rate buy downs or things like that. You're just going to need to cover your ancillary costs. So your title fees, your document fees, making sure, your minimal buyer's expenses on top of whatever your cash payment price is, right? So what you want to do is kind of get to that number and then work backwards and see where we can get from a incentive value to get in on something like that. On an inventory home, very similar structure. Again, if they've pre-bought the rate, there's a chance you may not be able to get all of that money unless, it's been an aged inventory or it's sitting for a long time. You may just have to kind of work the numbers and see where it makes sense. The other thing that might make sense in some scenarios, this is not every scenario, it might make sense to let them go ahead and finance it. Potentially, I'm just throwing this out there as an idea, let them finance it and then pay it off 6 months later. Now, pro tip, and I'm just going to tell you this. If you like them, if like the mortgage lender is great and they're super helpful and you're working through that, don't pay it off right away. Because if it gets paid off right away, I think it's within 6 months, maybe a little less. They're going to have to pay back on their end. They're going to owe some fees. Wait 6 months and then pay it off if you're going to go that route. So you could potentially look at doing it that way. But here's what I would tell you. Ultimately, if you're wanting to pay cash, your leverage is not in, oh, I can pay cash. Your leverage is in your quick ability to close, right? On average, on a lending side, they've got to run, it's 30 to 45 days on an inventory. They got to get all the lending approval. They got to get all the appraisals. They got to get all the documents. You can eliminate that and you can come in and say, hey, you know what? I can close 21 days, no financing contingent, no appraisal delay. That is where your real leverage is. And then you use that to your advantage before they ever throw out a number in any scenario, right? I'll close in 21 days on an inventory home. I'll close quickly. We've got the cash. And then let's work our way backwards out of that number from where we started. Now, of course, what is always true, the higher the purchase price, typically the more room we have to move downward. The hard part with this is in Texas at least. So if the house is on MLS, they're going to have to record that sale. And so what they don't want to do is they don't want to jack up their comps on something that they have to record data on that might screw everything else up in the neighborhood. So there's going to hit a point where no matter how much cash you have, they're still not going to go below that number. And it's going to be different for every builder in every neighborhood in every season. So you just kind of got to look at it and see. So get them to where you feel comfortable. On average, we're seeing builders right now spend between 6 and 8 to 9% of the purchase price on seller concessions for rate buy downs and closing costs. So at least factor that part in, right? So let's just say, hey, we're at let's just call it an even $450,000 house, right? And let's say they're spending 7%. So we've got 31,500 off that 450. So we're, 419, whatever. And again, higher the purchase price, the more room the builder probably has to move, especially if you're looking at inventory and if you're looking at aged inventory. Now, here's the really pro tip. You've kind of been through all the whole gamut of this. And this goes true too for financing as well. If you can find a home that the builder does not have listed on MLS, like it's a, what they would call a pocket listing, which means it's only on their website, or it's not even on the website. It's a home that they're getting back that somebody canceled on for one reason or another. And they're not, those are few and far. You can find them. We know where to look for them. And here's the thing. There's no guarantee that you're going to find it. If you do find it, you might have the greater ability to negotiate on it because it doesn't have to get recorded as a comp that somebody else can then use to negotiate against them. So if you find that and you're looking on their website and you see it, or you're talking to your agent that sells a lot of new homes and that understands the space and that knows how to find these deals, I'm talking to you guys, look at me. Then we can kind of have that conversation and we may be able to negotiate even a little bit more off of that. But again, if you are truly purchasing with cash, and now I'm just going to be honest with you guys, a couple years ago, I had somebody tell me they were trying to purchase with cash and they didn't actually have the cash. So if you tell me you're purchasing with cash, we're going to have to, run through some proof of funds thing. And they try to throw a whole religious thing out there. And again, I have a degree in theology. I understand the Bible. They were like, long story short, these people, we learned our lesson. They told me their father was going to pay for their whole house, and they didn't mean their earthly father. She actually meant their heavenly father, and Daddy God did not provide. So if you tell me you're paying in cash, we're probably going to have to do some verification, just, from previous wounds in my heart that people have burned us. But leverage your speed and ability to close. That's a big piece of it. And again, probably 6, 8, 9%, depending on the deal, depending on where they're at. And remember, it's not like a car dealership where they're making their margin. They're not making money on inflating your interest rate. They're not making you money on all these add-ons. They're truthful. Their money is made in the margin of how they built that home, how labor and material, how much the land costs were, all of that. And builders care about their margin, but they also care about just their churn rate, right? Like they need to continue to move inventory. They need to continue to move homes. So they care about both those things. So you can use those to your advantage. Now, if you're wanting to start looking for homes, I'm going to give you this, and then I will rock you out on a couple of scenarios. If you're wanting to start looking at some exclusive homes, we found a new tool that we are working with and we're partnering with. I'm actually going to drop the link in the description of this video. It's a resource called New Home Buddy, and they exclusively do listings with builders, and a lot of builders are starting to put their stuff in there before it ever hits the MLS. So if you're wanting some exclusive access, we don't have all the builders in there. We're working on getting them all in there. And as they expand in Dallas, we're going to see more and more builders in there. But if you're wanting that, the link is down in the description. You can create a free account on our New Home Buddy site and start browsing through homes, through builders, and kind of see. And the really cool thing is you can sort by tax rates, you can sort by builder incentives, you can sort by school district. It's awesome. We've got that in there. And of course, if you don't want to go there, we've also built our website directly for you. You can go to zachschmidt.com and just kind of start browsing through the areas, as many resources as we can to put in front of you. So let me give you a couple of objections that you might have as we're thinking about this cash thing. Cash means I can close faster. Yes, always usually does within reason. Obviously, the house has got to be done. You're like, hey, we were talking about it earlier. I don't want to deal with a lender. Here's a valid. I understand. Let's just work the numbers and see what might make sense for your particular situation. I can kind of give you some blanket statements on what we might deal with. And then you're like, hey, what if we just don't negotiate at all? Like, that would be dumb. You need to negotiate. That's the fun part, right? They're rarely going to discount on the base price. It's more going to be your incentive stacking, because those don't show up in compensation or comparable data in the MLS, and you're more likely to get it in incentive form. than you are in price reduction or a combination of the two. So if you're a cash buyer, listen, I would love to have a conversation with you, like a legitimate cash buyer. If you're one of those, like, I'm an investor looking for a great deal, don't call me. Like, just genuinely, because you're not actually an investor, you're a fake investor. And I would say the best play with this is aged inventory at the end of a quarter, and you're looking for builders that are slashing prices. That's when cash is going to give you your actual most leverage. Every other scenario, I would honestly probably consider using their lender just to see how the money works and makes sense, right? So if you have any other questions, let me know. And again, cash buyers, you need help, we're here for you. Not a cash buyer, you're like, I just need to figure it out, Zach. We're trying to get into our first home. We're here to help too. Our Zoom link is down in the description. If you have any questions, please let us know. And we're here to help any way we can. Thanks.